How can you use your tone of voice to enhance your communication? I'm Jason Hewlett, Hall of Fame speaker and award-winning entertainer. Thanks for being here with me. By the end of this video, you'll understand better how to diffuse a situation, inspire an audience, and ignite confidence in others that you lead through the tone of your voice. What is the best way to diffuse a difficult situation by using the tone of voice? So number one, I want you to notice your tone of voice. How do you speak when you're speaking to certain people? For example, right now I'm on camera, and I could be like, "Hey everybody, it's great to be here with you right now," or I can try to be more personable and talk to you like we're in a conversation. So that's one difference. It might be speed, it might be volume, but in terms of tone, think about how you talk to people that you love. For example, do you have children? Have you ever noticed how you talk to them? I know when I talk to my children, sometimes I'm very loving. I'm like, "Hey, you guys, this is gonna be great." And other times I'm like, "Did you do that with your bed? Did you make your room up?" And they're like, "Daddy," they're scared because of my tone of voice. Maybe talking to my spouse, the person that I love the very most. I might have a stern voice or I might have a loving voice. Those are family examples. Now let's talk about the people you work with. Do you have a coworker? Have you noticed the way that coworkers talk to you? Have you noticed their tone of voice? Maybe they feel like they're talking down to you, but maybe that's just how they talk. Then there's the boss. Have you ever thought about how you talk to your boss or how your boss talks to you? Tone of voice matters. And so as long as we're conscious about our tone of voice with the people that we're talking to, it can change the relationship really quickly. So your tone of voice has great power along with body language. For example, if I'm on this video and I go like this and I'm like, "That's really exciting." That almost seems ridiculous, doesn't it? But think about it. I just put my hand down away from my face and go, "That's really exciting." Now my body language is added to my tone of voice to allow you to realize, "Oh, I believe him. He really feels like that is exciting." And so your body language says a lot along with the tone of voice that you use. Just be sure that they match up. And so remember, we need to be confident, assuring, and direct. But we also need to have some variables in there, don't we? Sometimes we need to add a little humor, maybe some extra energy, maybe some sympathy or some empathy within it. And so as long as we have those within our voice, direct, confident, assurance, then we have the ability to truly manipulate the way that we communicate. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video how to diffuse a difficult situation. Now, recently I had a conversation with somebody that had to be what's called a crucial conversation. It was a difficult one. And here's the reason it was tough. Because I am the president of an organization of volunteers. And with these volunteers, they're volunteering their time, talents, gifts, everything that they have to this organization. Here's the challenge. They're all family members, and they're my family members too. We have somebody within our midst that has a really hard way of communicating because of his profession, which is a place where he has to be in court, and he has to talk very strongly and sternly in every single interaction in front of a jury. This person is amazing. Great talents, great leadership, has done so much for family, and yet in communicating, the tone of voice is a little bit strong and hard for others to feel that he's appreciating them. And so recently I had to have a difficult conversation with this person who is double my age. And that's always a tricky thing because he's been around a lot longer than me, has a lot more life experience, and I appreciate that. But as we sat down to talk, and it was actually over Zoom, so that makes it even trickier because body language, there's that barrier of the camera. What happened while we started to talk was I realized all I had to do was listen. And I listened for a while he spoke about things he was concerned about with our family. And I appreciate that. But I sat there and listened, and any time that his voice became too excitable or accusatory or agitated, I would say, "Remember, let's use this voice if we can." And he would say, "What? What do you mean?" And I'd say, "I'd like you to listen to my voice, and I want you to know I understand what you're saying. Just talk to me. I love you and I appreciate you. You've got this." and he would calm down and he would use a different tone. It was about being reassuring, confident, and direct with him, and saying, if you can choose for yourself in your communication with our family to talk with a little bit less of the accusation in the voice. The accusation in the voice is what turns people off while we're talking. And he has started in the last few conversations to use a tone of voice that is so much friendlier. It's more helpful, it's more encouraging, and people are surprised to hear it. But we can help diffuse a difficult situation just by encouraging someone else to understand their tone of voice and by emulating that for them to see how they can do the same. So before I move on to my next point, if you found this video helpful so far, please subscribe below. That would be so awesome because I have more videos like this that I'll be creating, and it's so fun to be able to engage with you. So thanks for subscribing. So as promised at the beginning of the video, how do you inspire with your tone of voice? How do you inspire an audience? I found that it's actually quite simple as long as you're willing to step into that space for yourself. So for example, I've used a story for years that has gotten laughs, it has made people think, and it has helped people to realize that all of us can share more of what we've got. You see, when you tell a story, you're possibly holding back, you're maybe saying, hey, this happened back then, but sometimes we have to step into the story. And for this story, I share about my teacher when I was in high school who heard me singing in the hall. And she heard me singing in the hall, and I use the accent of her voice. And so I changed the tonality while telling the story. And I say it like this. I was walking down the hall as a 17-year-old boy in high school, and I was singing to myself like a 17-year-old does. We away. And you know, people behind me are like, wee mo wappa, wee mo wappa, wee mo wappa, wee. No, it didn't happen. I wanted it to. All of a sudden, the door to the choir room flew open, and this lady goes, ah! Her name was Mrs. Hall. She was the choir teacher. She said, who's singing in the hall? She had an English accent, and so she said, who's singing in the hall? I said, it was me. I'm sorry, I'll stop. She said, don't stop. You have a gift. You're a singer. Come into my classroom. I said, I'm not a singer, I'm a basketball player, because that's what I thought I was. And Mrs. Hall looked at me and said, probably not. You're a singer. Come into my classroom. I went into her classroom. The next thing I knew, she made me sing for her. I didn't know any songs other than Alvin and the Chipmunks' Christmas song. So that's what I did. Christmas, Christmas time is near, time for toys and time for tea. And Mrs. Hall looked at me and said, that's not normal. Now, here's what's interesting about that story. I changed my tone of voice, I changed my accents, I used volume and inflection, but it tells a story. And it's a way of me teaching that somebody saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I've gone on to now be a performer all over the world because of Mrs. Hall. But she inspired me by the tone of her voice. She was excited. She was passionate. She believed in me. I didn't even believe in myself. But because of her tone of voice, she inspired me, and she now inspires others around the world every day when I share that story. So how we ignite confidence in others through our voice is simply through being direct, being assuring, being variable. Sometimes we have to be funny, sometimes we have to be light, sometimes empathetic, and change our voice just a little bit in order for them to know, I get you, I know where you're coming from. Other times just to be excited and say, you've got this. We can ignite confidence in somebody just by our tone of voice. I hope you can hear it while I'm doing it. And what I want you to practice, if you will, is something that most people have never thought of before in their life. I want you to practice the difference in your voice between how you talk to your child versus how you talk to your child's friend. Think about the difference. And sometimes we'll notice that we talk way nicer to our children's friends than we do to our own children. That's a problem if it doesn't align. Do you see what I'm doing? Practice that for yourself. It'll change the way that you parent. It'll change the way you communicate, and will change the way that you lead. Thank you for joining me here. I'm Jason Hewlett.